Hey, welcome to the Milwaukee Music Lessons podcast. My name is Alex Bennett.
And I'm Robin Bennett.
And we've got kind of a bit of a fun topic today, another little bit teacher-centric topic, but this is, hopefully this would be like a good, if you're just getting to know us, maybe this would be a good way to find out kind of what we value. We are going to each come up with like our top things, like if we could only teach a student one thing or a couple things. I think originally we said like if I could only teach one thing, and that got really difficult. So I said, okay, let's go for like a top three.
Sure.
And so I've got three things down here. Even that was hard to like get it down to three things.
I have so many honorable mentions that I really, really, really debated over.
Yeah, but
I've got three that are my top three, and I have 3 or 4 that are honorable mentions.
Now, just out of curiosity, are you going to introduce them in any particular order, or are you going to try and go in reverse order to top?
What do you want to? Do you want to know my top right away?
No, I kind of want to save that for the end. So
okay,
I would like to. Let's go backwards. Let's go like 3, 2, 1.
Okay, so my number 3 is reading notes on the staff.
Okay.
I think it's really important because that is the way across most of the world where you're communicating music to each other. That's the way that you do it. So you don't have to speak another language to take their music that's on the same kind of staff and be able to play it. So I think that's a really big skill. And even it's hard to differentiate for a lot of people. Okay, did I go from a line to a space? Did I go from a space to a line? Did I go from bottom to top? Like, did this get higher? Did it get lower? So even that in itself is a huge skill to be able to just discern, is this on a line? Is it on a space?
Yeah, I mean, language, which learning how to read and understand music, it is a language.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's the end-all be-all. I think it's a really good skill that, especially as a piano teacher or as a voice teacher, I want my students to know those things because it also goes into sight reading. Here's a piece of music. Try and play it right now.
The ability to learn language effectively, any kind of language, is the ability to not only communicate with others, but communicate with yourself to be able to comprehend quickly. And so, I totally understand that because if you know how to read well, then you know how to organize the thoughts, the pitches, the tempo, the rhythm, and it is a deceptively complicated way of reading. There's a surprising amount of information stored in even just a handful of notes. So,
okay, what's your number 3?
Sure. My number 3 is just to simply play consistently. Like, seriously, that's I know that's such a silly one.
That's my number 2.
Oh.
I don't think it's silly at all.
No. So, it sounds like such a simple thing, but
yeah.
But so what I find is that especially with newer students, and even sometimes seasoned students, just playing a little bit every day, regardless of what it is. Now, people come to us as teachers and they say, like, can you feed me the right information or what's the best way to do anything? But a lot of times it's one of these things where it's like each step that you take kind of illuminates what the next step is supposed to be. And a lot of times people are afraid to just do anything for fear of the number of mistakes that they're going to make. But doing something is better than doing nothing or trying to plan out. Yeah, you miss
100% of the shots you don't take.
Or trying to plan out what you're going to do perfectly. It's just not, So the other thing too, and I made this analogy to one of the students I just had a little while ago. So I'm really, I'm into fitness. I like going to the gym a lot, right? I go 6 times a week. And so I watch different people online to talk about, I watch fitness YouTubers, and especially I like the sciencey guys too.
Sure. You want to know why. Why is this important?
And I found it quite fascinating the other day that when you do workouts, you divide things into sets and reps, and so reps is just one push through the exercise, and then a set is how many reps you do inside of a set. And so they found that if you were to do one set of an exercise to your limit, basically to the point of fatigue where you couldn't pull out another rep,
Right.
or you were within one rep of failure, then that would account for approximately 60% of the potential progress that you could make just with one set.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So that means that every set you do after that, you're getting a diminishing return, right? It's not like if you go from one set to 4 sets, you make 4 times the progress. It's that first set accounts for 60% of the progress, and then every set after that is less and less of the potential, like, overall maximum muscle you could get.
Right.
And that kind of got me to thinking, too, just about that. It's about how many sets you do in a week when you're working out, and the same thing is just true with practice. And don't get me wrong, there is a difference in, like, quality of practice and things like that, but most of that stuff doesn't really start to matter until, like, a couple years in. When you're starting to get stuck against a wall, when you start hitting some of your natural limitations of what you can actually do. So much of it is just, like, exposure, just doing it a lot, doing it all the time.
Yeah.
And so, so it's, you just gotta develop the habit all the time.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest one. That's why consistency is my number 2, is because it's so important to create that habit. And that's such a big thing for newer students. And it's one thing that if I could go back and tell myself as a kid would be actually practice. Like, I don't know, only my drum teacher, Angela, you got to tell me whether or not you could tell if I was lying that I was practicing all the time. I was not practicing all the time. But I had a knack for rhythm. Don't know why, but I had a knack for rhythm. And so when I would go to my drum lessons, I'd be like, yeah, I got it. I practiced. But I wish that was one thing, because I feel like I would be better now. I would be better at singing. I would be better at percussion. I would be better at piano if I had actually sat and practiced. Now, I'm not saying that I didn't ever practice, because I did. It just wasn't consistent. I didn't carve out 5 minutes of my day every day to sit down and play something. And I think, just like you were saying, it's more about just doing something to get yourself in that habit. It doesn't have to be, I'm sitting down and playing for an hour. It just has to be, are you practicing every day?
Yeah, absolutely. My way of just playing all the time was watching TV and playing with the guitar at the same time.
At the commercials?
Not even just during the commercials, during the actual show.
Just kind of noodling?
Noodling. Yeah, making random noises, right? But even just to be able to have my fingers touch the strings and make a consistently good noise.
Sure.
That's hard enough to begin with.
I know. I have a hard time. I took guitar for 2 years. And I mean, every now and then I'll pick up Jay's little guitar or something. And I'll be like, wow, I am trash.
It's also not the highest quality guitar.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's
should have known when on the headstock it said Gibson.
But like pushing down on the frets and having an actual decent sound, is such a big thing. I remember trying to play my friend's clarinet and I couldn't even get a sound out, So it takes effort just to, like you said, have the quality of the sound. So, but noodle on your instrument. Figure out where it goes high sounds and low sounds. Sorry, I got something in my eyeball.
The ability to creatively improvise, too, is also really important. It actually turns out to be...
Just to not be afraid to noodle,
It turns out to actually be one of the defining traits of people who most consistently continue on. Like the retention is highest in people who are willing to be creative on their instrument. There's a sense of ownership.
Make stuff up, just to try stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, since that was your number 2.
Yeah, that was my number 2. So what's your number 2?
So my number 2 is to, especially, granted, remember I'm doing this under the context of the students who come to us.
Okay.
So for me, my number 2 was, don't just take everything I'm feeding you. Go out and find information on your own. Be willing to go and search for information yourself.
Yeah.
There was another study that I looked into. So I was trying to.
I feel bad. You put so much more thought into this than I did.
I was trying to look up studies to show the difference in quality, in outcome of people who are self-taught versus people who are teacher-taught.
Yeah, you were talking to me about this.
And I expected that I was going to find some difference, like, 50% of people who go on, get better results. But the actual difference was like negligible. It was like 2%. Like, it was such a minute percent of teacher-taught students versus self-taught students what the final results were.
Okay, so it didn't really matter if they were self-taught or teacher-taught?
So from a technical standpoint, it was about even.
Okay.
Students who were self-taught showed a slight edge in creative ability and ear ability.
Okay.
But people who were taught by teachers showed an edge in music theory.
Okay.
Comprehension, right?
Sure.
But from a technical standpoint, it was totally even. The only way that you saw a dramatic increase in the results, both technical and otherwise, was when you had people who were initially self-taught and then went on to teachers. And
right. I think I remember you saying that's because they already had that self-drive, so that if they felt they needed to look something up, they would.
100%. Yeah. And so basically it was people who found themselves to be a combination of self-taught and teacher-taught. So they had the wherewithal and the drive to go and find information on their own, and then every week come back to their teacher and go, I found this. How does this work?
Sure.
I'm trying to perfect this, but I'm stuck here at this blockade. How do I overcome this? And that makes a lot of sense, because honestly, in my experience, those have been the students who have gone on and had the greatest level of progress. It's the people who, they don't just rely on me to just spoon feed them information. They're
taking it upon themselves.
A level of ownership.
I think that goes way beyond music. Anybody who's in a regular classroom who is getting more invested in those kinds of things and looking stuff up for themselves and asking questions. Those are the people that learn so much more.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, the more time, again, this is going back to number 3, but just the more time you're exposed to something.
Yeah.
The more, but you're getting your information from multiple sources. You're finding communities and places that you're interested in that will have more of the specific information that you want. And then when you need to go, when you're trying to conquer that next task and you're looking for feedback, that's when you go to a professional and have them. It's like you rinse and repeat that cycle.
Yeah.
And you don't even look like the same guitar player or the same musician in. I mean, I could expand it out to a year, but I've seen people radically transform their playing in as little as 3 months with a cycle like that.
Wow.
Like they just completely different people.
Right.
So
interesting.
It's really cool. So anyways, so for me, that's my number 2.
Okay. My number 1 is rhythm. Because
it explains a lot why you got so passionate in the last podcast.
Rhythm just makes everything more exciting. Like there's all those different parts to music, like you said last time, where it's the rhythm, it's the dynamics, it's the harmony, the layering, right? But for me, like, you can have layering and stuff that's interesting. You can have louds and quiets, but if you don't rest when there's supposed to be a rest, there's so many dramatic moments that I can think of where all of a sudden everyone stops playing and only one is still going. or all of a sudden everyone is playing, or all of a sudden you got like a clave rhythm, that changes it up. There's a song that I'm doing with a student where I don't remember if it's a current song or a past song, where the melody, most of the notes landed on the beat. It was very on the beat. And then when it switched to the chorus, everything started happening just before the beat or just after the beat. And it was such a careful difference to make it's still part of the same song. It still had that feel, but it was slightly different enough where you could tell, oh, something new is happening. It was a very clear distinction between verse and chorus that I thought was just the coolest thing. And the rhythm is something that can do that. You can slightly change it. It still has the same tone. It still kind of has the same rhythm, the same melody and stuff like that. But that rhythm shift was just enough to give you that difference. I don't know. I love rhythm. I could go on and on about like how much you can divide it. You can make it into so many things. That's like a number one top tier thing for me. Even like with choirs, if choirs have really good rhythm, it sets them so far apart from other choirs because vocalists have notoriously bad rhythm. That's just from my experience.
Fair enough.
But rhythm is such a big thing.
It's huge. Rhythm it's 1/3 of the equation. And as we talked about a bit in the previous episode, rhythm it's hard to visualize. It's hard to see in front of you because it is strictly a moment in time.
Right, yeah.
And people don't always have that ability to consistently keep the same tempo and understand all of its subdivisions and how it can be broken apart into various ways. It's not easy for people, but it takes a lot of training, and you have to consciously think about it all the time until it gets to that point where it just becomes a background task, and then you can feel it, right? But people want to feel it right away.
Yeah.
And they don't understand how even just the tiniest minute difference, it's like the devil's in the details.
And that's the biggest thing for me is like just a slight rhythm shift can just change everything. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. There's so many things where it's just the rhythm of it and I'm like, oh, that was exciting. That's a big thing that makes music for me. Because if it's just like a blah 4 on the floor, I'm like, okay, but what else can you do?
Well, even 4 on the floor has its moments.
I know, it has it like when it's in contrast to something else.
Right, context matters.
Right, but if you're just doing straight 4 on the floor the whole time, you know what I mean? Like it gets so boring. It's like singing the same note over and over again, but if you don't change the intensity, if you don't add other stuff on top of it, it can be a drone. I don't know. I like rhythm.
Yeah.
What's your number one? Please stop me from talking about rhythm.
Okay. My number one is the ability to work on one thing for a very long time.
Oh yeah. Yours are a lot more abstract than mine are.
They are. Yeah, sorry. So, I'm going to precede this with a personal story.
Okay.
My first song I ever learned, very unique for guitar, Iron Man. Nobody had ever done it before. So,
okay.
My very first song was Iron Man.
That one?
That's the one.
Okay.
Yep, good old Black Sabbath.
Yep.
And I was self-taught, and for some reason, I had the gumption that if I couldn't play it with the original recording, I couldn't play it.
Okay.
That was the standard that I'd set for myself. And so first it started with just I need to look up the tab, which was already new to me because I'd never learned how to read music on guitar at the time anyways. learn the tab, work on it. We started with just the simple version, just the single note version. We weren't even doing power chords yet. And then play along with it, or play as much as I possibly could. And then the next goal was, can I play it with the actual recording, even just the simplified version? And so I would load up the song and pull it into Windows Media Player and start the song from right where it's about to actually start. I'd put my cursor right on the little slider exactly where it starts, or at least a couple beats beforehand. And then every time I'd have to start over, I would just, click the mouse without moving it and start over and jump on it. And I would either go until I made a mistake or go until we got to the end of that passage. And then it was time to move on. I eventually got to the power chords version of it. Any guess how long I stuck with it before I moved on?
The power chord version?
Yeah, like the little more and not just the power chord version too, because in the original recording there's a single note version and then a power chord version, and it changes depending on whether or not Ozzy is singing. If Ozzy's not singing, it's power chords. If he is singing, it's the single notes.
Okay,
and they switch back and forth.
That's a good layer technique.
Yeah, exactly.
The power chord version, I'm gonna say a month.
6 weeks is the correct answer.
That's
So I spent 6 weeks doing one thing.
Sure.
Now at the time I didn't realize how important that was, but I just thought I can't do it unless I play it with the song. That's the standard that I have. And there was a lot of frustration along the way. For one, I had a guitar that couldn't keep a tune, so it was like every second take I had to retune the darn thing.
Ugh.
But being able to stay in time, being able to keep track of where you are, being able to do those transitions, making sure that you're consistently playing the notes right, that I'm not pulling the notes out of tune, that I'm keeping my fingers spaced apart properly, that I can memorize and remember, know where I'm going, where I'm at in proportion to things, when things are changing, listening to the environment around me. Like, that's a lot of skills to try and develop, okay?
Yep.
It's not as simple as I just learned this one thing.
I just repeated it over and over again.
There is a large swath of skills that happen to get from that point A to point B. And a lot of people, what they do is they spend 1 or 2 weeks working on one thing, and then they go, okay, I'm getting bored, let's move on. Or I'm getting frustrated, let's move on. And so what happens is you get a player, the first song they learn, right? And they do it for 2 weeks and they get it to like a C level. And then they go, okay, time to move on. And then every 2 weeks they're learning a new song or a new passage or a new riff or something like that. And they're doing it until they get it to a C level, and then they move on. But in the meantime, the first guy, all right, if they stick with that first one and they wait until they get it to like an A plus level, it's going to take them way longer. But after I did the first song, the next song I moved on to was Smells Like Teen Spirit, another very original early song to learn on guitar. Any idea how long it took me to do that one?
I'm going to cut it down to like 4 weeks.
It's actually 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a lot.
To like an A, playing it with the recording level?
Right. And that one...
Do you think it was because you had already done the work of like, I know to zoom in on where I stink and do that over and over again? Like, you had already done the process.
Yeah.
So you already like mentally knew how to break it down?
Yeah, I had developed the skills of how to get something to an A plus level. And so then every song after that, the standard was I have to get it to an A plus level. And so by the time, because these things, they compound upon themselves, right? To get them to an A plus level. It's like the first one was 6 weeks, and the next one is 2 weeks, and then the next one is, 12 days, and then 11 days, and 10 days, and 7 days, whatever. It just keeps getting faster and faster and faster and faster, every single one. And then if you compare person one and person two, you have the person one who is at an A plus level, and it's like it takes them longer at the beginning to get that first result, but then because everyone stacks quicker after that, eventually they catch up with person two, who is doing everything at a C level, and they do everything at a C level typically at the same rate too. It's like 2 weeks, move on, 2 weeks, move on, 2 weeks, move on, and eventually by the time person 1
Yeah.
has 10 songs done and person 2 has 10 songs done, they don't even look like they've been playing for anywhere the same amount of time.
Sure.
But they each have 10 songs down.
Yeah.
But this one's got all A pluses and the other one's got all C's.
Sure. I think that's a very professional musician mindset of like, I'm also curious because you grew up playing video games where you have to do a level over and over and over and over and over again. Do you think part of that, like, you know, it's not done correctly if I can't, you know, hit the top of the flagpole at the end, you know, like I have to get a perfect score or it's not worth it.
I don't know if video games are necessarily the reason for that.
But do you think you're like, that had already kind of been a habit of like, I have to do this over and over and over again before I get it? Do you think it was already kind of in you a little bit?
Sure. I think there's, yeah, I think some of that maybe.
I'm not saying it's causation. I'm just seeing a correlation there.
Yeah, you might be right. Honestly, I couldn't tell you. I just know that to me that was the standard. It was like, what's the point of learning the guitar if I can't play it like what's on the recording?
Sure.
I don't know why that was my goal or my standard or whatever, but I think a common issue I see, and this is not just you know, it might sound like I'm picking on this like a kid's thing. This is an adult's thing too.
Yeah.
Is they get so far into it and then they want to quit. And don't get me wrong, as a teacher, you're balancing the best possible, you know, what you can do, you know, on paper, like what's the best possible way to do it, with the psychology of you want to keep playing. We want to keep you playing as much as possible, but it's a momentum thing. The one of the books I read recently, From Good to Great, has a whole series of chapters dedicated on this idea of like a giant metal disc or a giant metal flywheel. And it's like at the beginning, that metal flywheel is like incredibly tough to get started pushing. And so it might take like 100 pushes to get it going to a decent speed. But because of its size and its weight and its momentum, it's going to keep going. It's going to keep going essentially on its own. And it, you know, and so the hardest part is getting it started. Yeah. But once you're started, it's nearly impossible to stop.
Sure.
And so if you're just starting out, or if you feel like you've been stuck, it might just be a volume thing. It might just be how long do you stick with one thing consistently for a long period of time. It might feel like, well, I worked on it for 4 weeks, so therefore I can't get it. It's like, well, did you work on it every single day? How long did you work on it every single day? Did you focus on the right parts? Did you you know, there's 100 different factors that you can focus on, but oftentimes I think people just underestimate the amount of volume it takes to get past that first one.
Sure.
And so I was a little bit lucky in that, as I had mentioned earlier, I kind of disguised the work behind playing over the top of a TV show and using my addiction to Futurama to cope with my lack of guitar skill. And that even though it wasn't the best way to practice, just the sheer amount of volume that I did in some of the early stages let me make faster progress than I might have normally.
Sure.
So
interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have any honorable mentions?
Not if we want to keep this podcast under an hour.
Okay. then I won't say mine then, I guess.
We'll hold on to them for another day maybe.
Okay. All right.
Because, yeah, I could...
3 other things.
Yeah. 3 more things I wish I could pass on to every student.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right. Any follow-ups to any of that, or are you good for today?
No, I got my video game question in.
Okay, that works for me. Okay. And I think I'm all good, too. So, okay, well, thanks for watching this episode. We appreciate it, guys. Hope to see you in the next one. My name is Alex Bennett.
And I'm Robin Bennett.
All right, we'll catch you next time. Later.